Vaelith Dusk Whisper was now a name on everybody's lips in Skyrim. For half my life, I was nobody, so when I chose my name, it made no difference to the world. And for the other half, anonymity is a necessary tool for thieves and assassins alike. However, the occasional thief, and the more than occasional assassin has found infamy alongside great kings, warriors, and scholars. But none of the books, less the ones I had, could tell me how they dealt with it during their lifetimes. Few knew I was now the listener for the Dark Brotherhood, how the Night Mother Serene Tone went with me into my dreams, and guided me to my kills. But by my very movements, and the way I handled my dagger, most knew I was at least associated with the Dark Brotherhood. And those looks were either fearful, occasionally curious, and every so often a sense of intent swarming. Anybody can kill, people do it every day, but a mere killer and a professional assassin were two completely different things. I left the recruitment of new blood up to Nazir. I had gotten to have considerable faith in his capabilities and his judgment. I had little interest in proclaiming my leadership in Astrid style, but I became something much worse, a role model. I remember the topic of Astrid coming up more than once. How should her memory be handled, and was she now blessed or damned by Sithis? I decided that the facts of what happened should be laid bare. She did betray, but she sought to make things right by offering herself up in the Black Sacrament. I believed, and still believe, she was now a worthy bride to the Dread Father, and hoped she served with a greater dark purity in that stead. I turned my attention to my time in the Thieves Guilds, the Companions, and my expanding holdings throughout Skyrim. While in the company of my fellow rats down in the cistern, I found myself at the table of Delvin Mallory, much of the time, as he bridged the narrowing gap between the Dark Brotherhood and the Thieves Guild. He had a simple philosophy: survive long enough to enjoy the fruits of your labor, but I saw that Astrid's betrayal had worn on him, just around the eyes. While he never mentioned how far his association with the Dark Brotherhood had gone, I suspected he had probably lived to have seen at least one dark sanctuary. He seemed to have known when we moved to Dawn Star how well the renovations to it had gone, and that we were recruiting new members. But mostly, he only discussed Thieves Guild business and how he had mixed feelings on the notion that the guild was somehow cursed. By chance, he mentioned a hidden apartment, of sorts, that had been constructed by a former guild master, and of whom our man Vikil possessed the key. It had an ominous name, Shadowfoot Sanctum, but I soon parted with my septons, and it was a cozy retreat when I needed to be nearby. While at the Dark Sanctuary, I remember telling Bibet about it. She laughed as I told her it to be a perfect sanctum for a vampire, and asked if she wanted to see it. She simply told me she already had, and we left the conversation at that. She could have been friends of affection with its previous owner, his assassin, or both. I found myself at my makeshift altars, now crowded with the likes of Arkay and Akatosh, who were now bound with Sithis, Haseen, and Nocturnual. I can't say that I prayed, if there is such a thing as proper prayer, but I appreciated what they had taught me in their own ways. I did begin to wonder if perhaps the misfortunes of the Brotherhood and of the Guild weren't mere superstition. The assassination of the Emperor, though, told me that such fortunes could be reversed, but I wondered what it would take to restore the Thieves Guild. I never cared much for our guild master, Mercer Frey. His arrogant tone reminded me too much of Astrid. I suspected he would, one day, betray me, but that could be years or even decades from now. My relationships with the other members varied greatly, but some of that curt attitude could be blamed on misfortune. When I was not shrouded in darkness, I supped with the companions in their ancient hall. They were honest, honorable, and bound in past glories. They were the best qualities of the Nord culture, but were somehow innocent of the fact that honor in Skyrim had died a long time ago. Nevertheless, they were servants of Haseen, as I found out the storied history of lycanthropy. The old man, Kodiak, was a werewolf and had gifted that to members of the Circle, their most senior and capable number, including that Nordic goddess, Elah, the female form of Haseen personified. I was surprised when I was woken up in the middle of the night, my head still swimming from the meat consumed at our latest feast. I wondered if I was being led to some unspoken of debauchery or a confrontation over my darker dealings. Skjord led me to an ancient chamber beneath the forge, and said that I had proven myself to become part of the Circle. Only a fool was swayed by honeyed words, but again, like in Helgenar at High Hrothgar, my curiosity got the better of me. I had killed more than a few werewolves in my time, more recently that conflicted fool at the behest of Haseen. But never had I seen one in complete control in all their bestial glory in front of me. Skior told me not to be afraid, but I wasn't. I was in awe. I knew that I faced a law, perhaps a different form, but even her scene had many forms. It's rare that I can say I had complete trust in the moment, but somehow in front of that altar I knew what was being offered, and I took it without hesitation. The blood burned through my body, perhaps for hours, but somehow I was now being joined to the hunt, in a way I never knew it before that day. I don't remember much of my first transformation, a simple revelry, an intensity I can't describe to others. I woke to my senses sometime in the middle of the next night, not far from one of the small farms I had purchased in the hold. My beautiful Ayla was there staring down at me, performing a sacred duty to watch over my first transformation. I felt a strange feeling, and questioned to what I had born as a werewolf, and how I ended up in a field. She made it a point to reassure me, nobody was killed nor harmed. I frightened a drunk beggar and gave the city guard a good chase, but nothing more. Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but somehow the regard of the population of Whiterun had festered into my soul. She told me I had passed my trial. While my memory was muddy, I had shown considerable control even in such an animal-like form. I didn't think much of poetry, and rarely used words to fulfill my base desires. But I tried to scramble for the right words to say to my mistress of the hunt. I was an assassin, and a thief, and yet deception failed me that night as she saw how I felt in my eyes. She simply held my hand for a minute, perhaps two, and the topic was changed as we went back into the city. That damn fool, Skiord, had run off to strike at the Silver Hand without a shield brother nor sister. Before I knew it, Ayla and myself were storming towards their keepers, panicked and fear set into her eyes. I heard rumors then of Ayla and Skiord. Of course I heard rumors of every possible pairing of my shield brothers and sisters. I can't imagine any man or woman reducing my goddess to that of a simple farm wife, as fruitless as trying to capture the wind in a bottle. I resisted the call to transform, instead choosing to mark each of my Silver Hand target with a knocked arrow. Their silver weaponry meant nothing to Sith's embrace. As she had feared, we found old Skior dead, but our vengeance was swift and ruthless, but he now served her scene in his eternal hunt. Grief was foreign to me. I remember watching priests of Archaea attempting to console those who had lost loved ones. And I had sparked grief in many. I can remember their lamentations and how it had no effect on me. My earliest years I swore to try and fix in me that which had not been broken in the first place. But there in Jorvaskr, I felt something at the death of a fallen shield brother, even one whose time with my mistress of the hunt I envied it. As I often did in those days, I ran from what I could not understand, and in that moment I had a mission with Mercer Frey. Little did I know where it would lead me. He told me of the death of the previous guild master, Gallius, and the betrayal by Kolayar. Betrayal was a common theme in Skyrim, always leading to ruin and misfortune. Now I saw what it did to the Thieves Guild. My arrogance blinded me to what happened next. I didn't even spot the vantage as the arrow struck me in my leg. My heart slowing, my vision narrowing. I thought I'd see a final battle between Mercer and Kolayar, but fate has a sense of humor. I couldn't have predicted what came next, as Mercer's blade cut into me, and I was bound for the Dreadfather's embrace. I opened my eyes to a rather attractive dun-mare face, her eyes wide, my would-be assassin's bow nudging me into consciousness. Had I earned a reward in death, or was this an oblivion temptress? Special poison. Oh, how I felt so honored, and the truth of the matter, how Mercer had killed Gallius, how Kolayar had been forced into hiding, but my bandaged wounds burned like fire as I tried to maintain consciousness. While my recovery would take some time, even with the best potions and elixirs, we had to move to safety and decide what to do next day. As I recovered in the bed of some forgotten shack, she outlined what had happened, what needed to happen, and the truth of the guild's misfortunes, laid out at last.